Welcome to the Winning with Shopify podcast. This is the podcast to help you scale your Shopify store into a money-making machine. This episode is brought to you by Tidio, the highest-rated live chat software on Shopify. Tidio helps Shopify merchants gain and retain more customers with personalized shopping experiences and automates up to 47% of recurring questions. Increase customer satisfaction and sales with personalized shopping experiences. Visit Tidio.com/WWS to find out more and start using Tidio Premium with a discount exclusively for Winning with Shopify listeners. Now over to your host, Nick Truman.
Hi everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Winning with Shopify podcast. For anyone that's not tuned in before, welcome to the show. Absolute pleasure to have you with us today. If it is your first time and you want to listen to some more episodes, hit the subscribe button, the follow button, whatever channel you're on. If you haven't already, check out our Instagram account. I believe we're on TikTok as well. I'm not personally a user of TikTok, but I have downloaded it now. We're also using our YouTube account, so it means you can see some shorts that we're posting. You can also watch the videos and see people's reactions to some of the more controversial questions that I ask or may be asked as we go through. If it's not your first time, check out some of our new mediums. And if you haven't already, please do leave us a review if you do enjoy this podcast. It helps get the show out there and helps more people tune in, which means we can help more businesses through the advice that we give. Coming on to today then, so we're obviously in the middle of this series now talking about what we call customer success, and how do we turn customer success into more customer sales, which is the most important thing. I am joined by a very special guest today. His name is Blair Beckwith, and he is an expert when it comes to Shopify apps. And the reason I'm pulling that face is you'll find out in a minute as we get in. But Blair, welcome to the show.
Morning, Nick. Thanks so much for having me. Happy to be here.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you with us. And you've just said morning. It is afternoon in the UK for me, but morning for you. So wherever you're listening to this, it's probably one of the two, if not evening. But Blair, before we dive in, we ask all of our guests. And again, Shopify Apps, I know, doesn't cover everything that you do. So why don't you just give us a little bit of an overview, first of all, to your background, a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. So I kind of got my start in e-commerce back in early 2012. I joined what was at the time a pretty small company in Ottawa called Shopify. You may have heard of it if you're listening to this. Once or twice, yeah. I joined as an intern on a new team called the Shopify App Store team. That was a team of just a couple people at the time. A variety of things happened, and that team shrunk down to kind of just me. And then I spent the next almost 6 years building that team up. When I left in kind of late 2017, I like to tell people that there's like nobody in the world who had seen more Shopify apps than me. And I think at the time that was true. I think Things have changed a lot. Apps have gone crazy. There's now thousands of them in there. But I have never quite managed to escape sort of the Shopify App Store's orbit. Since I left in 2017, I've been working with kind of a variety of startups, a variety of brands, building inside of the Shopify app ecosystem. These days, my company is called Railspur, and we invest and consult with technology companies in the space, as well as brands, helping them sort of navigate kind of the Shopify tech stack, choosing the right technologies to solve their problems, and helping the SaaS companies themselves, the Shopify apps, understand kind of how merchants think, how to grow, how to solve problems in sort of in this world. And that's kind of how I spend most of my time these days and have for the past few years.
Nice. And it's interesting to hear, actually, that you came from Shopify themselves working in the app section, because I think, and we're going to be talking more about this as well for everybody listening. We're talking a lot today about Shopify apps, specifically about customer success, because most apps engage with your customers or bring something new to your customers, especially. But it's rare to talk to someone that's been on the inside. And I think I'm going to give you a very short list of myths that have just popped into my head while you were sort of running through that. I certainly know that a lot of merchants get very confused about which apps to use. They get confused about which apps to find. They often get confused about how much apps cost, because it might be free to install the app, but you also might need a subscription to run on the app. So I guess question one to kind of kick off with is, on the App Store, so Shopify's App Store or App Marketplace, they keep changing the name, I forget what it's called these days, but on Shopify apps, what is one of the best ways for people to navigate that, to find the right app for whatever the given purpose is? There's certain things they should and shouldn't be doing as a merchant.
Yeah, absolutely. I think like that's changed so much, right? Along with kind of the App Store and the size and scope. I think back to the early days when you had, when I joined, there was like 50 apps. Now I think we're in the mid thousands now.
Mm.
It's crazy. There's like multiple solutions for every need. There is like very few unsolved problems. So almost no matter what problem you have, there's something out there. And that's not even to consider all the solutions outside of the App Store.
Mm.
I really have a lot of empathy for new brands coming into this and trying to understand kind of how all these apps work, how they fit together, how to find the right solution for their needs. I think like this is something that Shopify has put a lot of attention into.
Yeah.
If you've been sort of following along, you would have seen like a big App Store redesign that I think is like moving very much in the right direction. I think
Good.
over the years, you've been able to rely on things like ranking in the App Store. Shopify's done a good job of like ranking by popular, and if something works for other brands, then it's probably going to work for you, I think was kind of the assumption.
Mm.
There's still an element of that, but they brought in some more editorial style, maybe is like the way that I would talk about it,
Yeah.
where highlighting specific brands in their stacks, using sort of more Shopify words rather than relying on partners. As somebody who like works with partners, I sort of see both sides of this, and I
Yeah.
see
Yeah.
how partners talk about their apps is maybe different than how their customers might talk about their apps, and things like reviews are very important to partners, which incentivizes getting a lot of them and maybe not worrying about how truthful those reviews are. And so there really is kind of
Yeah.
a lot to wade through. I think, yeah, most of the brands that I talk to rely so much on like person to person recommendations, right? There's
Yeah.
like a lot of these communities, whether it's on Facebook or whatnot, where
Mm.
brands congregate to talk about this sort of thing. And that
Yeah.
is always sort of my go-to is like find somebody you trust, whether you've known them for 1 minute or
Mm.
a few years, who
As
can
long as you
tell you
trust
kind of
them.
what's worked for them.
Yeah.
Yeah, is definitely a thing. And I mean, I don't want to prattle on too much about this, but like trust is a big thing, right? And I mean, this is something that I've increasingly been frustrated by, maybe,
Mm.
is like the Shopify influencer space, right? Some of these
Yeah.
people who talk a lot about how to grow on Shopify.
Mm.
I think they always have recommendations, and I think that's something that like I'm very careful about. I much rather talk to other people. I think a good
Mm.
barometer is to listen to people who actually run a business on Shopify and listen to their
Yeah.
recommendations over people who talk about running a business on Shopify.
Yes.
Because in my experience, the ones who talk about running a business on Shopify often have these like relationships with apps where they might be getting
Mm.
a bit of a kickback based on that
I,
recommendation.
I often wonder with those guys
And
as
so you
well.
can't always trust these experts.
Yeah, I wonder if you're
Yeah,
that good at running your business, so good that you're the one on the
yeah,
podium right now. Why do you need to rely on YouTube income or
yeah,
something so heavily when YouTube don't actually pay
yeah,
much? You're not getting many
yeah,
views. I think it's one thing to jump on
yeah,
podcasts and go to conferences and share your experience. You've just reminded me of this.
yeah.
Why I was sort of beaming back at you. You've reminded me of something that an influencer years ago, and this is probably 6-7 years ago when Shopify was very new. Probably around the time. Probably around the time you were sort of moving on from the app team there. I remember watching a YouTube video that had nearly 1 million views of a guy. It was called like the number one killer app, and a guy saying like the one thing every store needs that guaranteed almost to double your revenue and stuff like this. And I had a look at that video, and it was horrible. On the left hand side of the screen, when you land on the store's site, a wheel of fortune would appear, and you click spin. And it would spin, and you get a free reward. And anyone who's been tuning in for a long time will
I
know
remember.
will know I sound like a complete hypocrite because so long time ago, Winning with Shopify was run by a different business to my business that runs it now. There's a different business, and we used to have that exact thing on our website. And when I got involved as CEO, that was the first thing I did is rip that off the website. And when we ripped it off, our conversion rate
Yeah,
went up. Not down, but up. More people converted because we didn't
yeah,
have a wheel of fortune and people refreshing the site to try and win the free month with us or whatever.
yeah,
But I think it's a very interesting point you've
yeah,
raised actually about recommendations and forums. And I think as you say, I would completely back the point that anyone who's run a business is going to have come across these problems. So whether that's listening to them talk on a podcast or finding them in groups or even reaching out to some of them and say, hey, look, I'd sell a completely different product to you, but I love your website and aspire to be like you. Can I ask what sort of apps you guys use? Equally, there's a great tool. I don't know if you've come across this before, Blair, but one I use quite a lot called Built With. And you can put any site into Built With, and it won't necessarily tell you every single app, but it will certainly tell you some of the apps. It will tell you if they're using MailChimp, Digital, Klaviyo, for example, and start to break out some of those things. But recommendation surely is the best way to go, because they'll also say we've tested 10 and this is the one we're using.
Yeah, yeah. There's a couple other good solutions for that too. There's an app called Store Leads. I believe their website is storeleads.app, and it's sort of like Built With, but specifically for kind of the e-commerce ecosystem. And so they go even like a little bit deeper and are able to surface some apps that Built With doesn't. Definitely check out Store Leads if you're curious.
Nice.
Yeah, I think that's the other. Yeah, that's the other nice thing as sort of this sort of ecosystem has grown up is it's become feasible to build a business sort of around this problem, right? Back in the day when there was like 50, 60 apps, there was like 20,000 merchants. It was hard to build sort of a business around helping people with this problem. But now that the merchant base is so large, it's all of a sudden become quite feasible to try out new models for helping brands. And I really think this is a problem that's worth solving. The apps world has just gone so crazy over the last little bit, and there's just so much out there. Like I said, I definitely feel I feel the pain for brands who are coming in today and trying to understand all this.
I think the worst thing as well is you look at, if you start just going around the app store going, what else could I add? I feel like you've already failed. I always say the same with Google Analytics, which led me to this thought preparing for this conversation today is I think if you know what you want before you get in there, then you've got a really specific target. And let's face it, time is money. If you're going to sit there faffing about with like playing with this, playing with that, and getting distracted going, oh, look, we could put this logo in our footer by using this app. It's like, but if you just drop the logo in yourself and shrunk it and put it in as a WebP image, much faster page speed, and you don't need this app, and you certainly don't want to give another app access to all your data.
Yeah, that's definitely a thing that I encourage people to think about. There's this guy, Cal Newport, who's like he's an author. He's written a couple books around productivity, and he has a really interesting framework for thinking about this. He's very much an advocate for like using technology less or maybe using technology smarter. And he's talking about it from like a personal level, but I think it's like very applicable to a store owner's life as well, right? Where if you go into the app store and you look at any app, there is like a benefit to using it, but the bar needs to be higher than that. Like if you installed any app that had any benefit, then you would install every app. And that is just not feasible. Like we need to recalibrate our bar for what benefit is worthwhile, because every app has a cost, not only monetary, but in just like complexity and what it does to your store. You mentioned like giving all of your data to apps, like that's a thing. How many apps do you want to give all of your store's data to? And what are you getting in return from that? The answer to that needs to be more than just any benefit. It needs to be something that is like meaningful for your business.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess, so we've spoken about the wrong sort of apps and how to find apps. I understand you've got a few ideas about what apps people should be using, some of the top apps that are available at the moment that you think stores should, as we said, all the caveats of check it for your store, think about it before you use it. But what are some of the apps you think stores should be using? And the caveat to that question is to make more money. What's driving sales?
Yeah, no, for sure. This is this is a really good question. And I mean, I mentioned earlier, you should always be careful listening to people like me, right? Who have sort of like occasionally like a vested interest in their recommendations. I'm going to try and stay away from ones where I do have a vested interest as much as possible. Cool. And if I mention one, I'll say like,
or just say you've got a vested interest and we all know that's it. If it's still a good app.
Yeah, it's definitely. So, I mean, I think this is a really exciting time for apps. I mentioned earlier that like there's very few unsolved problems left in the App Store. There is kind of like something for most problems. There's a solution out there. One of the things that I feel sort of pretty strongly about from just watching this ecosystem for years is that like every kind of like 3 to 4 years, I want to say, there's a new entrant in a space that has somebody that's already super established. Think about this like customer service, for example, like some of the players that we all know, like Gorgeous. They've been around for kind of like 3 to 4 years. They've been like pretty dominant. They've been like the number one recommendation for brands that want to solve this customer service. And we're starting to see some players kind of come into this a little bit more. I think this whole series is sponsored by our friends over at Tidio. They're like a really interesting one of this, right? Where they've done chatbots forever, but they're expanding into like more general ticketing. And I think there's some really interesting new entrants in sort of every space every 3 to 4 years. And so that's actually how I talk to brands about picking solutions, right? Is like, we don't want to be migrating tools all the time, but let's pick sort of like the best solution for the next 3 to 4 years of this business. And with the understanding that every business is different and has different needs, there is no kind of one size fits all. I know the theme here is customer service, so also kind of thinking about that as well. Things like ticket reduction, I think, are like a really interesting space. I think like one way to measure customer success and customer support is like how many tickets do you get versus how many do you solve. I think that's one way, but like I think focusing on reduction in the number of tickets is super important. I think they've been talking for years, every customer service platform in e-commerce about like what percentage of your customer service tickets are "where's my order," right? That's like that's like the number one thing. If you can eliminate that question, you're eliminating like 30% of your customer service load. And every sort of customer service tool out there, I think, does a good job of automating away that question.
I think there's two ways to do that as well, aren't there? With just on the kind of, where's my order? And I think one is making it super easy when they have that question to get them to the answer quickly. You know, every email you've sent after that, it's got like an order status button. They click it and it automatically logs them in. It takes them straight to their order status. And if that just says dispatched, you've kind of failed. It needs to say like, where is it? You know, where is the actual tracking happening now, linking into the shop app? I think there's a flip side of that though, is they won't need to do that if you are sending them regular updates. And I think as I can't remember who it was, so apologies if you're listening. Whoever it was, please message me and we'll put it in the notes at the bottom if we can. But one of our guests months ago actually said that when they were sending out updates to people, they viewed it slightly differently. Said we're actually training them to receive marketing. So they were sending SMS and email saying your order's on its way, it's coming, it's coming, it's coming. They were getting them into the routine of receiving stuff. So then said your order's arriving today, and actually if you want a top up, then you have 7 days after today to click here to get a half price top up. Now they've made a second order, we've just increased lifetime value. So there's stuff like that, but they looked at it like we were training people to receive those SMS messages or those emails, which I thought was really tactical actually, but certainly there's lots of ways to do that, isn't there?
Yeah, well, and I think that's one of you mentioned at the top also like focusing on increasing sales, right?
Yep.
That's definitely a priority for every store. And I think like if you look back at like order tracking tools a few years ago, or even maybe more than a few years, 5-6 years ago, that was viewed primarily as like a customer service reduction thing. And I think it still very much is that, but there's new tools like Wonderment that are sort of turning that into like a bit of like a sales channel in a way. Yep. And I'll say I've got no relationship with Wonderment. They're just a tool that I really like
anyway.
out there. Yeah, not yet. That's funny. But I think there's like a lot of really interesting opportunities to take what have traditionally been cost centers like customer service and turning them into profit centers in ways that you can make more sales and truly sort of leveraging those touch points. There's another app called Spently that I know a bunch of people there. And they told me years ago, and it made so much sense. What they do is that they're like a order confirmation email replacement. And one of the things that they said that always made me laugh is like the order confirmation email on average has an over 100% open rate. It's the only email that not only does every customer
Very
open, but
true.
they open it more than once,
Yeah, yeah.
right? And that was like so interesting to me, is it's like we're sending so much email marketing and being satisfied with like 20% open rates, 25 if we're really good.
Yeah,
Meanwhile, we have like this real estate that customers are going to, and they're
yeah.
refreshing it like multiple times a day because they're excited. And
Yeah,
why aren't we turning that into a sales channel,
yeah,
right?
yeah. Very smart.
I think there's like so many opportunities just like that.
And what was the name of that one? Sorry, I think people are going to want to know that one.
Yeah, that was an app called Spently.
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 Nice, nice.
They are very cool. Yeah, yeah. We'll make sure that gets in the
Hmm.
notes. But
Yeah, yeah, 100%.
no, there's tons of
Cool.
stuff too. There's tons of stuff. I think AI is like a very hot topic right now
Hmm.
that I think is funny. It feels like there was like such a slow burn with AI over
Yeah.
the years, where it was maybe talked about, whispered about.
Hmm.
I think for a long time it looked like it was kind of going to go the way of Web3 and crypto and some of these buzzier topics, but then in the last year or so, it feels like things have really taken off. And I mean, especially in the last few months with
Hmm.
some of this like chat GPT stuff.
Yep.
I'm like by no means an expert, but we're starting to see, I mean, the time from seeing the first sort
Hmm.
of tech demos of that to seeing implementation in real business feels like
Yeah.
it's been like so small, right? There's like a
Yep.
bunch of Shopify apps coming out now that
Hmm.
are like using this AI to like write product descriptions, answer tickets.
Hmm.
To call back to like the where's my order thing, it felt like
Yeah.
on the customer service side for a long time, where's my order was like the only ticket type that could be reliably automated. And now
Yeah.
it feels like we are like months away from being able to automate so
Yeah.
much of customer service.
It's going to be interesting.
It's
I
very
mean, as
interesting.
as an SEO person, Google has all but publicly announced that anyone who uses Chat GPT or any AI software they can detect to write product descriptions, Google is going to be absolutely throwing them off the first page of Google. There's not been an update to confirm that at the time of recording, but as you say, things are happening quickly.
Yeah.
It's going to be interesting to see how Google responds
Yeah.
to that, because we as a team have used it a little bit just to write stuff, just going, write me a news article about this. Okay, that's rubbish. Do another one. That's rubbish. Do another one. Oh, that's quite good. And then we've written an article using some of the sources and facts and figures that have come in from that. But I think the point being is that we're still filtering it, which in a way is good, because then we've still got the
Yeah.
human element of we can charge the client and we still need to do a job. I also think that what Google doesn't want, and we all know that's going to happen, is it's going to be round for anyone who's been in the SEO world at all or knows the history of the SEO world. We've got link farming 101 about to happen as round 2. Back then it was
Yeah.
Google said if you've got links into your site, it's all really good. Still the case, but they need to be of good quality, and quality is an enormous topic in the SEO world. But people were then just building like a site with links to all of their clients. An SEO agency would build it with links to all their clients. They would then duplicate that site a million times and change the domain by like 2 or 3 characters every time, buying domains out. And Google said, if you do that, we're putting you in the bin. So the challenge now is how many sites, it's not a bad idea, but how many sites now are going to be built off the back of just AI generated content, which AI needs human content to learn. And the way it learns
Yeah.
is it crawls the internet. So ChatGPT is crawling the internet to find all this content. So at what point is there going to be so much AI content out there that AI is feeding AI? And us humans, we're the ones who buy and shop and make decisions, are going to read stuff on people's sites and go, that's rubbish. It doesn't bring to life anything.
Yeah.
And actually, I would argue at
Yeah.
the moment, I'm certainly not a conspiracy theorist or anything, but I would argue that I think this is one where AI is going to have its place. But I think the brands that sit down and talk to other humans and come up with what they actually want to be and who they want to be, they're the ones that have always thrived. And I think they're going to be the ones that continue to thrive. So word of caution with it, I would say, but it's certainly an interesting time to see what it could do. And actually, what if you used an AI bot to crawl back through like every single order your store's ever had and tell you one small piece of information, and it does that based on you asking it a question rather than an Excel formula? That's powerful.
Yeah.
That's really powerful. So I think there's going to be some really interesting places to use it for sure.
Yeah, I think you touched on something really, really interesting there, where like, and this feeds into a lot of sort of the discussion around Shopify versus Amazon and things like that. Like,
Yeah.
Shopify is like fundamentally like people buying from people,
Mhm.
and I don't think AI is can or should disrupt that. I mean,
No.
I was in Vermont for a wedding last weekend, and me and my wife stopped in at like a small boutique to buy something for my 2-year-old who we left at home with grandparents. Great weekend away.
I bet.
And I walked into a store and like the owner was there and the products in the store, they looked like the type of souvenirs you would find like at any souvenir shop in any tourist town in the world. But she was there and she had her sewing machine in the back and she was like sewing and we got talking. And within like a minute of talking to her, I realized like there's no way that I am leaving the store without buying something. Like I don't think I can. And I think like that is like the human element of shopping that I think it's like it's harder to bring online. Yeah, it's very powerful if you can do it right. And like AI is not going to replace that. Like customer service platforms are building like AI powered chatbots and that's great, but like it's going to solve a lot of busy work, but I think there's always going to be room for just like a human conversation around this. Even just this week, Apple announced that they're doing like live video chat on site for people who are like shopping for a new phone, and you can like chat with like an Apple expert on site with like live video. And that's like, I mean, if Apple is still, I mean, maybe not today, I'm not sure, very recently have been the most valuable company in the world. They place a lot of value on these human relationships. And so like, I believe that they know something and that's going to remain important.
And we had our good friends at Ghost Retail on the show recently as well, talking about live shoppable videos. And that was cool. That was, whether you're in the warehouse, a showroom, or you're actually in a store, you can just join the queue and connect with someone, and that person can walk you around. The thing I loved about their tool especially is you can actually control the basket as the merchant. So if we're walking around the shop and they're like, oh, I love that product, like what size am I going to need? You can say, well, this is actually European sizing, so you're going to need this size if you're this size in the US. Therefore, cool, I've added it to your cart for you. And then you can even stay with them while they go through the cart and purchase. You say, I can't see anything that's going on now, but yeah, let me stay with you. And then they get to a point, they're like, oh, it's just said the delivery cost. I wasn't expecting that. And now you've got a chat person on video who can say, yeah, we're really sorry, but we deliver our products properly. And actually we carbon offset. That's the reason we haven't done it. So all the, cost for all the gas that's used, the gasoline to get the product to your house, we're actually going to carbon offset. So that money goes we cover the cost of delivery. That goes towards planting trees. And it's like, oh yeah, it does say that actually. Cool, right. Finish your payment. And something you would have lost, you now keep. So I think it's really powerful bringing that into play. But yeah, as you say, making the store environment more physical. The problem of that, though, is, which is going to be my next question, I think, which is an important point to talk about, is all these apps can get quite expensive, both buying the app, paying the subscription for the app, and then, like I've just explained, the customer service element. Well, you need someone that's free. And if your store's doing its job, no one's free because you've got loads of customers running around your store. How do you quantify the cost of some of these apps? Like, it's obviously easier said than done on some of them, but how do you start to drill down on that to understand your value that you're getting from them?
Yeah, I think it's a really good and a really hard question. I think like in a perfect world, there would be like an analytics tool that plugged into every app that you use to run your business and pulled in perfect data around attribution and around like whatever key metrics these apps are trying to influence.
Wouldn't it be lovely?
Wouldn't it be lovely? I mean, especially on the attribution side, I feel like the attribution question has been an open question forever.
Still haven't found
really
a guest to cover that one, but yes, sorry.
I know. I've got a couple of people that I could recommend you talk to, but I think
you heard it here, folks.
I mean, even
bold statement from Blair. That's no, yeah, we'd love to. But yeah, so how do we? Sorry, I keep interrupting you. How do we track the value of that?
No, that's good. I think the best you can do is pick like what your sort of North Star metrics are as a brand, especially as like a smaller or a newer store. Like there's a lot of noise in these numbers when you're looking at a bunch of numbers. You might, if you're like a brand new store that's starting and you're getting, 5 orders a month or 10 orders a month, like you're truly just starting, and you get a month where you get 7 orders when you typically get 5. Like, did you actually increase your order volume by 40%? Was that like an app that did that, or is it just noise? You happen to get 2 more orders that month, right? I think it can be really hard, and I actually for the very smallest stores, I actually try to talk people into not tracking these things too much.
True.
And also, I mean, how this fits into apps is like using as few apps as possible, right? In the beginning, I think that is truly, truly the most important thing. I think back to like how this problem has grown, like early 2012, I think the average number of apps per store on Shopify was like 3.5, which I was like very excited about, and now I think like most recent numbers I've heard is it's like 14 apps per store.
And
that's
rest,
too much for small stores to manage. Let alone measure. But I think like, I'm doing a very bad job of dodging your question because I don't think there's a really good answer. So I'm talking around it, right? I think for bigger stores that have teams behind them, I think it becomes like a more manageable solution. I still think quantifying it is hard. I'd go back to that sort of any benefit analysis I mentioned earlier, is like looking at the benefit and comparing it to, okay, like does this tool now necessitate a team to manage it? That starts to be a bit too much for the benefit that we're getting. And I think like that's largely how I would think about it. I know it's not a very satisfying answer, but like I said, the perfect world where there is a tool that manages all this for us, unfortunately doesn't exist yet.
Well, maybe AI one day. Maybe
AI. I mean, that's a thing for sure.
Yeah. I think you've made some really good points though. And I think also when you're small, having less apps and sometimes doing stuff a bit more manually, I think is acceptable. I think you kind of go through these different stages. And I think when it comes to apps, there's definitely a stage of just, get from 5 to 7 orders a month. Just get it done. I mean, you work for yourself now. I've run a few businesses over the years and got a couple at the moment. It's hard graft. You have to do whatever it takes to get those first few orders in. I think once you get through that stage, then you start going, right, there's something in this now. We've matured a bit. We've learned what's going on. Now we need to get into scalability. Yeah. So now actually we need the apps, we need the processes, we need the efficiency. And I guess the way you could quantify some apps in a way is going, right, well, this used to take us an hour per customer to work out. It now doesn't take us an hour. It takes us nothing because the app has replaced that. Yeah. Those are quite easy. I think the harder ones are like, we've added a chat widget to the site. How much more money are we making? Well, we don't know because at the same time we entered our peak month and we also scaled up our PPC budget. We did a competition and a flash sale. So no idea. Absolutely no. What we do know is customers using it. So we should continue to provide it because they're using it. But I loved what you said as well about big businesses. I think once you get to a certain size and you've got your customer service team and say there's like 200 of them, some nice big company, 200 of them sitting in a big office, just taking inbound calls and also making outbound calls to customers. When you've got that, you've actually got a big enough metric, as you say, to quantify it. You can run reports, you can put something on the screen in the corner. So to smaller stores, I'd say don't discredit that, but also don't do it now because you don't need to. But I think in terms of answering some of their questions, certainly in SEO, we're sitting down all the time with customer service teams and sales teams, whether it's Shopify and e-commerce or it's a lead gen business we also work with, sitting down with the sales teams and saying, what are the reasons people reject your proposals, or what do you always put into proposal? Putting as much of that as we can on the website whilst also being tactical about, in that scenario, we do want them to phone up, so we don't want to give them all the answers. We want to give them enough. They're like, these guys are really good. They're the best in the industry. We need to call them. But don't give away the price yet, because you say to them, well, we need to work out the price. You already want it, which is good. So we make them want it, but don't give it to them straight away. But certainly in e-commerce, I think there's an element of having a look at your user journey and going, okay, I think it's also giving the right information, but giving it at the right times. So I gave the example earlier about delivery. Yeah. Delivery is a really controversial one. If you put free delivery on your site and then you don't actually offer that because they've gone for next day or something else, but you didn't make it clear to them what was going on at the right time. And Shopify makes it difficult to hide that, which is good. They control the cart unless you're on Plus. And even then, they still, to some degree, control the cart process, which is good. But I certainly think, as we said, too many apps are too many. I think you've got to look at the value to customer. And I loved your thing about North Star. I think my first thought when you said that is that if you've got a proper customer mission, here's the problem we're going to solve in the world here. We had Last Object on recently, a Shopify store. They make products that the idea is it's your last time you ever buy this product because it's so good. It's also made from plastic that's been hoovered up. Hoover's a brand. It's been vacuumed up from the ocean. It's been vacuumed up, and we've made the product out of the plastic that's been vacuumed out of the ocean. So you're solving problems here of cleaning up the ocean. It's the last time you ever buy this thing, hence Last Object. And if you missed that episode, ironically, we were talking to them about lifetime value and customer retention. How do you retain a customer when your brand messages don't come back? Really interesting conversation with them, actually. But certainly with those guys, I mean, there's a mission they're trying to solve there. So then you could offset some of your apps going, yes, there's a financial matter here. We can't just buy every app available to us. But actually what we could do that I think could be beneficial is going, how does this help us on our mission? Because we know customers want us to clean up the ocean. How's this app going to support that? Well, this app is maybe the app's a real-time counter of, it knows per product how much plastic we take out of the ocean to make each product. So every time one's sold, it like updates saying how many tons of plastic we're taking out of the ocean. That's an app worth having as long as it doesn't cause any other problems. But actually, as you rightly said, Blair, the quantification's not, it's made us X amount more. We're never going to know, because it's like changing the color on your site. Well, how much more money you're making? Well, we don't really know, but the color looks cool. or it's more fitting of our brand, which is part of the long-term thing.
Yeah, I think that's all very important. I think, like you mentioned, like content and like brand storytelling and mission, like all of these things are things that an app can't solve for you. And I think like this is true for all stores. I think it's maybe like doubly true for small stores. Like the things that are going to help you get your first sales, take you from like 0 to 1, from 1 to 10, they're not apps. They are things like storytelling. They're things like looking at your customer journey and providing the right information at the right time, like you say. I think like these are all much more important. I think like one of the disservices that we've done as an industry is like presented everything as like a problem to be solved with a tool. And I think like this is true sort of, I mean, this is true even with like Shopify, the platform, I think, to a certain extent, right? And I think it's really important for like these like mission-driven brands. Like I think like they don't have to worry about this, but like some of the like purely drop shipping brands that have like proliferated over the years and things like that, like that is like totally a respectable business. And I love that these guys exist, but you have to think about your storytelling and your brand in a different way. And I think like understanding sort of like what your overall strategy and, as you say, mission is like much more important than picking another tool for the stack that's going to just ultimately slow you down.
And if you're anything like us, you probably had those
It's probably not good for me to say. So
yeah, I was going to say conversations with clients over the years where it's like they say like, look, here's the challenge, here's what we need to solve, and you kind of shrug a bit and go, that is not my problem. I'm sorry, but I can't hire staff for you. It's not my job. I can drive more customers to your store, but I can't hire staff.
It's not everything is an easy solve. Sometimes you actually have to just grind it out, right? Put in the work.
I think one thing that's good to do, and we did this with a client recently, it's been so fruitful, is writing out a list of the things we need to know to make our next set of decisions. And this client in particular, we were talking about, and we did actually use an app for this, but my point being is it was not the obvious app we would have gone to. We wanted to increase their conversion rate. We weren't converting enough people landing on the site. We're driving lots of people there. They weren't biting. Some of them were, but it was like we're getting like less than 1% conversion rate. Yeah. It's quite a standard product that you have all around. You have multiple of these around your house. It's nice and easy. And we said to them, we don't know what customers really want and what they don't like. We know what they do, but we don't know why. So we said to them, right, do some, get a NPS score, get some surveys out to customers, get your sales team in the bigger parent company, get them to phone customers and just ask them questions. And it was really amusing because they came back to us and said, we're not having much luck. We've had one response so far. And I said, right, what did that say? And they were like, oh, just somebody was like one of the first times they've bought online. I said, well, hang on a minute. There's something in there. I know I don't want to make a quantified, across the board decision, but why did they buy from us? Did they look at multiple sites? Oh, we didn't ask them that. Like, reply to the email and ask them. Can we ask you a few more questions? Why did you buy from us? Why did you trust us if you don't normally buy online? What was it that helped you buy from us? Because you might find it's something tucked down in the footer of your website, and actually we need to make it bigger. Let's run a test. Let's do an A/B test. Well, version A has that as a big statement. Version B doesn't. Leave it at the bottom and see, are we actually seeing a difference here, or was it just a one-off? Don't do the test based on one. But when they got some more quantified data from more customers as well, we found that actually customers loved their product, but they just didn't have enough information. And their first gut feeling was to just flood the pages with information, to which we say, well, don't do that.
Yeah.
Let's think tactically. What is the information they need? It's like, oh, we didn't ask that. Right. Go back to them and say, look, subset of questions, and we'll give you a voucher this time because you've been so kind in giving us round 1 of feedback. We need round 2 now. What information did you need? Could you tick any of these boxes? I needed to know delivery, returns, reviews, blah, blah, blah. And no one ticked the review one. However, when we did this again after we gained thousands of reviews rather than a few hundred, everyone ticked that now. I needed to know that. So now our customer was changing based on the fact that we had more information, which I thought was quite quantifiable, which very much outside of what we normally do with our clients on PPC and SEO, but it helped massively. We got the conversion rate up from less than 1% to nearly 3%, which now meant we were getting threefold increase in revenue per customer. And we hadn't actually changed the campaigns. We did, but we didn't change the PPC campaigns at this point.
That's so fascinating, right? I think that's probably just a good rule and a good takeaway for me to tuck away in my back pocket, right? Is if you don't know what to do, in your business, it feels like you can never go wrong by your first step being talk to your customers. That's never going to be a mistake.
It's scary
when you've
not
all
done
sorts
it.
of ways.
You're like, oh, here we go. We're going to get a barrage of complaints. It's like, well, I hope not, because if they complain, they're calling themselves idiots because they bought from your site. So, But
it's a good customer success rule too.
It is indeed. It is. Well, anyway, look, Blair, it's been great to have you on the show. We'll bring things into land in a sec. But final question from me is, if someone's listening and they're like, I don't know what apps to get for my store, or someone's listening going, we are an app and we're not getting out there very much, or actually we want to develop the app, but we need some investment. How do people get in touch with you? What's the best way to reach out?
Yeah, absolutely. You can find me, I would say social media wise, I'm most active on Twitter, where I am just Blair Beckwith. You can check out my pitiful website at railspur.co. It's pretty light. It's one of those, I'll solve that problem later. Don't go there expecting much.
Nice.
But no, Twitter's great. Website's great. Or just Blair at railspur.co via email. I've tried to structure sort of my business and life such that I can be super helpful to as many people as possible. I'm always down to talk to anybody, client or not. So don't think that you're wasting my time if you get in touch. Always happy to chat with anybody.
Great. Well, look, Blair, it's been amazing to have you on the show today. I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Nick, thank you so much. This has been a lot of fun. I really appreciate it. And hopefully we get to chat again soon.
Nice. Well, thank you very much. And for everybody listening at home, we're obviously going to be continuing this series for a few more weeks now. So if you've got any questions about customer success, customer service, feel free to go to our website, fill out any of the forms, send in a quick question. We're happy to try and answer it on the show, or better, try and answer it directly if I can and I know the answer. If not, I'll defect it to one of our lovely guests. So winningwithshopify.com. Go and check that out. Thanks so much for tuning in. We're back again next week.